Greens, A1. So if I sound a bit off, I'm a bit under the weather. Appreciate your understanding. I'm going to try this new format for content where I'm going to give my reaction to developer Q&A. Now, originally, I did watch all these videos because I was going to do a formal breakdown of the information contained inside of it in a more traditional, hey, check out these cool new features from this game. And then maybe going forward, I was going to give more coverage to Exodus. After watching these videos, my hype for this game is at an all-time low. I'll keep an eye on it, but I'm not hyped for it. So let's get into this. Now I'm going to play this normally. There's an opening segment here. I'm going to let that play as is. But every other time going forward, I'm going to fast forward to the first question, because this is the standard in all the videos of the introduction.
Hi, welcome to the Exodus Game Founders Q&A. The Founders Program is a community program where you can join us now at exodusgame.com for exclusive in-game rewards and more.
Well, yes, of course. That's the core of the game. So the ending is something that we're putting a lot of work into, and it's pretty awesome.
Hearing that your decisions are going to matter in an RPG is a very good thing to hear. That is one of the few things. Like when I first heard that, that actually had me a bit excited. Like, oh, good, we're going to get a proper RPG from Bioware veterans. So you're probably wondering, how could I be dire on this game when it's open so good? And there's 6 more parts to go through. Continuing.
Time dilation and how it impacts the choices you make in the game is the core of the game. It's what Exodus is all about. So yes, it's you're going to be able to make momentous decisions, and you're going to be able to see the results of those decisions over the course of years, decades, and even centuries.
You can learn more about Exodus by going to our website, exodusgame.com. There's tons of great information there, and including some lore that we've taken a lot of time to curate and get ready for you, so you can learn more about the depth of the story, the depth of the background of the universe, and hopefully be excited about being on this journey with us.
Time dilation is... All right, for those curious what the time dilation is about, there is this theory, part of general relativity, that as you approach light speed, that time that's around you will dilate. You'll experience it normally. For example, 2 days will be 2 days to you, but it could be 20 years to everyone else outside of light speed. This is going to be talked about a lot going forward in these videos, and it is a mechanic and story element that I feel will really make this game dated. And here is why. We are hitting a time period where we're about to have a huge upturn, or potentially a huge upturn, in how we understand the fundamental nature of the universe. Our laws of physics and a lot of our scientific theories are very likely going to be upturned, and we're going to learn a lot of these competing theories that academia did not give credence to for so long are going to be correct. The biggest start to that is the admission by the government that aliens are real. That is a huge revelation that has a far-reaching impact that a lot of people just miss, because aliens are being real. Like, oh, everyone figures like, oh yeah, we already knew they're real. We figured you a line, no big deal. Aliens being real means faster than light travel is real. They're able to come from their planet to our planet in a relatively expedient manner. They said we have their craft, so we know this for a fact, that you can go faster than light. And if you look into like Bob Lazar and other people in the field of ufology, you will learn that there is a lot of explanations for how this is accomplished. regardless of who's telling the truth and who's credible, one of them is probably close to the truth. What does that matter when it comes to time dilation based on general relativity? Well, it means that there is no time dilation as you approach the speed of light. That theory is completely bunk. Going into 2024, there is this rumor that we're going to get like some second big revelation when it comes to aliens. And now I've been a fan of this field on and off for quite some times, and I'll give you the same thing I give to a lot of conspiracies and political, oh, it's totally going to happen, bro. I'll believe it after it's happened and not a moment before. Especially when it comes to aliens, don't hold your breath. That being said, these are huge revelations that, if are expanded upon in the coming years, is really going to date Exodus being based on general relativity. And there are competing theories to general relativity, and there is discourse amongst scientists who do not believe general relativity is accurate. There are studies that purport to debunk general relativity, and there are questions raised and criticisms raised of scientific studies that are purported to show general relativity is true. It's a really fun read up, and I recommend anyone look it up, especially because in one of the competing theories, it is speculated that we are actually existing in what should be called a fourth dimensional space, that we occupy three-dimensional space, but all physics and activity in the universe occur on a fourth plane called the aether plane. So essentially, like movement, energy, light, and a lot of other effects have a basis in this other plane of existence. Why is that relevant? Well, if we actually meet aliens, let's say like 2024, that's why they're building all those super bunkers, those the elite, is we meet aliens and they say like, oh hey, yeah, that theory is correct. It's going to upheave what we know about the world. And I shouldn't say we, but I'm referring to we in the more general term as a nondescript entity. Rather than specifically everyone listening to this, as I do not like the ideal of generalizing everyone together as a collective, as clearly from my own speech, I do not agree with some scientific notions and ideals, and I put more stock into the competing theories. So I am obviously not part of the we, and I know many of you are likely not part of that we as well. Just to be clear, so no one needs to say in the comments, what's this we stuff? Now, this is relevant also because as you go on, you're going to hear them say how they want this game to stick around for 10 years. But if we're already having the government low-key say faster than light travel is real, time dilation is not real, it's going to be like Starfield basing their game around multiverse and not having aliens in the game. Going into Starfield, I really felt that would be a decision that would really date the game, not having aliens. I did not expect the government to flat out admit aliens were real before Starfield came out. That was like, if you would have had me bet like $1,000, have to bet, gun to my head, $1,000, would aliens be revealed as real before Starfield came out? I would have said no, and I'd be out $1,000. I just could not envision that happening. That really dated Starfield, and Exodus looks to have many story elements like that are going to subsequently date it. And I'm getting this out of the way early on, that way I don't have to talk about it later. Keep in mind this, though. Fundamentally, the science that our grandchildren are going to learn might very well be completely different than the science that we learned growing up and are learning right now. And that is huge. And unfortunately, that also means that stuff like this that are based in current theories, which are questionable in my opinion, are going to be dated, because especially because a lot of people don't care about the ideals of general relativity. They're only going to care whether or not time dilation is an interesting mechanic. And on that level, I feel yes, it actually might be, if not for concerns that will be raised later on. That itself is like Dragon Age 2. Dragon Age 2 was really fun because it skipped ahead so you could see the impact of your decisions, or you were supposed to. Having that as a concept fully realized would be amazing. And I just have skepticism that it's going to be fully realized.
Hi, welcome to the Exodus Game Founders Q&A.
I think the idea with time dilation and the opportunity to bring that to players in a way where the consequences of their choices are going to be so magnified is kind of overwhelming in an exciting way for us as game makers. Ultimately, that plus the freedom to really build a game in the way that we view to make a great player experience has always been something we've wanted to do. And doing it together and with this amazing studio that we've got has been a great opportunity and kind of a lifelong dream.
So I've been interested in time dilation since I was a kid and read about it because it's pretty crazy, the concept of time dilation. And another thing is just having the freedom to build the games that you want to build. That's awesome. That's what everyone wants when they get into the games industry.
You're going to notice for a lot of these questions that they do not go into specifics. They give generalities. Oh, I've been really excited about time dilation. Okay, talk about time dilation. What makes you excited about it? Why is it exciting? And after saying, oh, hey, I'm excited about it, he immediately deflects, which tells me we're hearing some PR bullcrap. And a lot of that was just PR bullcrap, which is concerning for the overall end product.
Yeah, companions are a huge part of the experience in Exodus. We're super excited by the palette that we're bringing to bear for all players. And we've got an exciting plan to unveil those over the coming months, and we think fans will be excited by them. But yeah, answer is absolutely yes.
I mean, cool, we get companions, but it's a space RPG from former Bioware devs. I think at this point in time, that would be more kind of a given, as it's not an action game. If it was more of an action game like Scars Above, which did have NPCs as well, and I also recommend anyone checking that game out, then I could see not having NPCs. But so far, a lot of the stuff is good information. It's just the little things that how they are saying what they're saying brings up concern.
The game is definitely not linear. That's not the style of game that we've ever been interested in making. It's a game where you make choices. Not only will your choices impact the fate of your people and world, but also you're going to have the freedom to explore this new universe the way you want to explore it. That's always a very important factor in a role-playing game. So definitely not linear.
I've played sandbox games. Do not tell me I'm going to have freedom to explore the world however I want, because very few games really deliver upon that ideal. Very few games are going to give you like Tenchi levels of interactivity where you are making your own way through the world, where there are limitations in the world and you feel empowered as you get more and more stronger to be able to overcome those obstacles. And then when you're walking through the end tier stuff that would wreck you in the beginning of the game, then you truly do feel like you've accomplished something, which is what makes sandbox games so fun. Having freedom is at this point in time a buzzword. It really means nothing. Do you really think that we'll be able to oh, I don't like that person, just kill them? Or, hey, I just don't want to, space travel no more, so I'm actually going to retire and become president and live through, being president of the world. Like, no, that's not stuff that's going to happen. Now, that last point is really hyperbolic because that would eliminate the entire point of the game. I'm fully aware. I'm just saying that there's not going to be a choice where it's like, I really do not like this character. I want to replace them with someone I really do like. And I want to, go through a selection process to find them. It's going to be more linear than they're letting on. And by the way, in some sandbox games, yes, that is something you legitimately can do. Maybe not to that degree of creativity, but you can be like, yeah, I really don't like this faction, and then just wipe it out.
So you're going to be able to do all kinds of different role-playing. This is a game about your relationship, not only with your companions, but the people of your world. And so you're going to be able to role-play with your companions in all sorts of different ways. And you're also going to be role-playing with the important leaders of your world. You're going to see and hear about the impacts of your decisions through, well, we do have a famous person who was announced with the game. And hey, Chad, how do you refer to that again with Matthew's character?
He's going to play somewhat of a mentorship role to you and kind of giving you insight into the choices you've made, and then ultimately probably influence the decisions you make going ahead in the rest of the game, because you're going to have insight from him that you wouldn't otherwise have.
So we have all this big freedom, but we can't get rid of the famous actor character because they're going to be stuck with this the entire time. Also, notice that they are throwing around a lot of buzzwords and not giving any real specifics.
Well, I wouldn't really call it a war between the Celestials and humans because, well, the humans would lose that war instantaneously. The humans are the underdogs in the cluster, and the Celestials possess technological prowess that's far exceeds anything that any human civilization could match. It's really a situation where humans are at the very bottom of the food chain in this galaxy.
Which raises the question, why don't the Celestial just wipe us out then if they view us as a legitimate threat? Again, I feel this is one of those instances where they could have gone into more specifics and address like the really cool lore between the Celestials and the humans. What's driving this conflict? What is the nature of the conflict? Is there politics on the Celestial side that is forcing them to not have, fully wipe out mankind or not fully engage with humanity? Do they view themselves as so innately superior that they don't really view humanity as a threat, which is our only advantage over them, is that at this point in time, they do not see us as something they need to crush with absolute ruthlessness. That's stuff I would love to hear with some passion.
There's, there's different mediums. Interstellar obviously was a movie that was very inspirational. From Dune as a book and a movie was very inspirational. We've also drawn from the IPs that we've worked on in the past, and we've worked on quite a few IPs.
When you claim to be this huge fan of science fiction and you give me two of the most stereotypical, I'm a fan of science fiction properties, Dune and Interstellar. Like, I'm not big into science fiction, but I know Dune and Interstellar. That's not screaming huge influence and fans. And again, no specifics on the games they previously worked on. Generalities.
So as a fan, science fiction, I love it. And obviously my number one is going to be Star Wars. Number two is Frank Herbert's Dune. And number three, I can't say because, well, it would spoil some of the things we're going to talk about in January.
Then why not put this video out and answer this question in January?
Oh yeah, we've taken the development of this science fiction universe very seriously, and the science behind any of the features within the universe is something we've definitely thought about. But more importantly, we've been working with some of the best science fiction authors in the world, some of the best directors and concept artists. And we're going to talk more about that in January, actually, who those people are.
Now, this is why that should concern you. If I didn't read this book by Vox Days, I would not know that there's this huge issue of a lot of Marxist woke writers in science fiction, and that centrist writers and right-leaning writers get, well, pushed out of the industry and have to really fight to get their works noticed. So when they say, hey, a bunch of famous science fiction writers, they are likely talking about far leftists. Now, I could be wrong there, but I really feel like they should name drop someone to give us something to gauge what the caliber of the writers are. And because I know it's not going to be Vox Days. I know it's going to be not anyone that's even related to Vox Days or associated with Vox Days. It's not going to be anyone on the right. It's very questionably going to be a centrist. It's probably going to be a leftist. And on top of that, directors are almost universally leftist and increasingly far leftist. So that right there is really nipping my excitement in the bud and telling me, hey, this game is probably going to be woke as fuck.
Hi, welcome to the Exodus Game Founders Q&A. The Founders Program is a community program.
It is the Omega Centauri, which is classified as a globular cluster, but is also called a galaxy. It's an ancient and very unusual kind of galaxy. You can read up on it. It's very cool, and we picked it for a reason. And I think it will allow us to tell lots of cool stories for years or decades, hopefully.
It is a globular cluster. It's the largest cluster of stars in the Milky Way. I actually did look this up. I did not see anything that called it a galaxy. I did not do super in-depth research, so maybe somewhere it's called a galaxy, but it is not a galaxy itself. It's literally just the densest cluster of stars in the Milky Way.
There's so many. I mean, we're active gamers ourselves, so a lot of stuff that we've played over the last bunch of years. I think I'd start at the basis of the kind of games we've made before in our careers, gives us that foundation. You know, RPGs with choice and consequence, where choices really matter, is probably one of the biggest driving parts of it. But then inspiration in terms of current stuff, everything from the Horizon Zero Dawn series to Tomb Raiders, up to even things from Naughty Dog like Last of Us. Like the quality bar that each of those brings to their different facets of the game are things we look at and hope we can bring into the experience that players will love with Exodus.
Each one of those had a level of wokeness to it. Horizon, more obviously so. The Last of Us doesn't even need to be expanded upon. And the Tomb Raiders. Tomb Raiders is really one of those really funny franchises because I've gone back recently and I played a game that was woke by its day's standard, right? And it was it barely would touch the meter by today's standards. It is really just shocking how far the things have gotten worse in gaming when it comes to political interjection into the media. So going back and looking at Tomb Raider, that's a heavily feminist franchise right now. It might be not as bad today as it was when it came out. Still, those are your inspirations for your game. Like each one has a valid criticism of wokeness. Yeah, I'm really leaning to this point at the game's gonna be woke, which really kills a lot of my interest because I really don't want to deal with a bunch of political interjection. The trailer launch with a lot of DEI elements. I can smell the ESG. And these Q&As are not inspiring any faith in me in this project. And I hope going forward I'm wrong. That this is a fantastic game, because I lose nothing being wrong and assuming a game was woke and not that good. I lose nothing. I then have a great game and they show like, hey, look, we just really were bad at advertising it. Fantastic game. I get to have fun. I get to put out content for you guys, and I get to enjoy myself. I just don't think I'm going to be wrong on that, though.
We're just fans of them. They're awesome. They're rockers that make great music. Ultimately, we also felt like their fandom for science fiction and for games, because they're gamers themselves, really maps well with what we're trying to do with Exodus. And ultimately, I don't know, it fits what we're doing really nicely. Like if you watch that trailer, the tempo of it, the drive of it all just really maps in really nicely, and we're excited about having them as partners in our first journey with the first trailer that you saw.
I really feel this needs to be said, and I probably should do a video on it separate from this. Stop using the word fandom. We are not a collective. You can go to any fandom and you will find people of differing opinions, different ethnicities, different political ideologies, different opinions on the franchise. Like, let's look Star Wars, for example. Like, people can agree, they don't even agree on what Star Wars they like, okay? And then there's the further ideological breakdown of like, hey, do you think the rebels were the good guys, or do you think the Empire, despite some of the evil they did, were the good guys? Who do you side with? You think the Jedi were actually noble, or do you think the Sith act had made more sense, or are you a Grey Knight? Inside the fandom, there are all these different competing ideologies, and I shouldn't really say competing, but coexisting ideologies. So saying like, hey, we're part of the fandom, that means nothing. That's a Hello Kids. That's when you say like, oh, we're totally part of the fandom. I don't know, like, I feel like, I don't know. I don't want to say de facto that excludes you from me taking you seriously, because I know there's probably going to be an instance where I'm going to say like, oh yeah, no, I'm actually a fan of, Star Wars. Or, hey, I'm a fan of 40K. And it will make sense in the context. So I wouldn't say that would rule me out. But when you overgeneralize fandom as if you're now speaking for them, and that's what a lot of these people do, is like they think they can speak for the whole fandom. And I guarantee you, science fiction, I'm not into science fiction. I don't know the science fiction fandom. I guarantee that is way more split. And keep this in mind, there are various fandoms who flat out just don't like each other inside a broader fandom. It happens. People don't always like each other. So stop throwing that word around. It doesn't mean what you think it means, and it does not give you credibility in the slightest. It's gotten to the point where that term is so abused that I am going to have to probably try really hard in the future, not knee-jerk to assuming you're a tourist or a cultural invader.
Balance is the key word there for us. Like, we've always felt like a great narrative will drive and carry the player experience overall, so that the minute-to-minute supports it, makes the player feel like they're part of it and an active participant in what's going on in their player experience overall.
I'll be honest, it sounded like a bunch of buzzwords that meant really nothing. I have to go back here, because I have a bit of phlegm in my throat and that was distracting me, and I didn't understand.
Balance is the key word there for us. Like, we've always felt like a great narrative will drive and carry the player experience overall, so that the minute-to-minute supports it, makes the player feel like they're part of it and an active participant in what's going on in their player experience overall.
Okay, they really did just say absolutely nothing there. It wasn't just me making a mistake there. I have to wonder, was that edited down? Because it sounds like at one point in time he was talking about the narrative and then switched to talking about the gameplay without specifying he started talking about the gameplay. Because the minute-to-minute stuff, that's your gameplay. But then he didn't really talk about how it like intermingled. I don't think he even really answered the question. That's got to be the most PR. They said nothing at all in this entire thing.
Hi, welcome.
Yeah, in the game, the protagonist is voiced. We want players to feel that identity and connection to the player, and voice is a key part of that to make it feel immersive.
We're supposed to have all this freedom, and then we have a voice protagonist. Okay, so Fallout 4 tried this, and it was a huge mistake as it limited the freedom the character and player had to express themselves through the character, I should say. Bethesda learned their lesson with Starfield. Like, say, there's a lot of stuff to complain about Starfield, but at least the main character was not voiced. They say this game is not going to be linear, but the moment they said voice protagonist, and that's why I was not going to drop that earlier, it really shows that this game's going to be way more linear than they earlier said. It's not going to be fully open to explore how you see fit. It's going to be probably closer to Mass Effect. There'll be some branching narratives like Mass Effect 3, which I really got to sit down and play. I haven't for very obvious reasons, but it's on Game Pass, so I really have no excuse now other than my massive backlog. It will probably be more along the lines of that in the terms of structure of the world. It's not going to be fully open.
We're super excited to have sci-fi fans join us on this journey. It's something we're passionate about, and ultimately I think a lot of the things that motivate us to make a great experience for players is driven by the universe that we've created here, and we're hoping that you enjoy it too.
We are also huge sci-fi fans, and we want to make a game for you that you're going to love and that hopefully you remember decades from now. And it's a game where we really are focusing on choice and consequences, and that will be evident when you get to the end of the game, which I hope you and your friends are talking about years and years from now.
The reason we're sitting here talking is because we're passionate about what we're doing, but we also really value, I mean, we worked on some games that we're really proud to have been part of in our careers, but one of the biggest lessons we learned was building a community actually helps us in so many ways. It helps motivate us, but it also helps give us feedback on the things that we're doing that ideally will make the game that much better. So spending this time now to help get you introduced to our universe is really important to us. We're not doing this just to, attract people to what we're doing. It's about building a community now that's with us for the long haul, to stay with us for the long haul. We would love this game to be something that we're still talking about 10 years from now as players and as developers for it, and that you're enjoying just as much 10 years from now or more than even today.
And that right there is why I gave that long, this game is going to be dated speech earlier in this video. And my second thought is the sci-fi community in the room with us right now? Can you point to them? This is my point I was making earlier. Like, there is no unifying sci-fi community. This is the problem with reductionist collectivism. You've taken a wide, diverse range of people who fundamentally do not share the same interests, and you're trying to boil them down into one demographic. Yes, there are some crossovers, but fundamentally the main audience for Doctor Who, when it was good, is not going to be the same audience for Star Trek when it was good, and it's not going to be the same audience for Star Wars when it was good. It's not going to be the same audience for Doom when it was good. These are all going to have different core fan bases. Yes, there's going to be crossover for people who just love science fiction, so they'll hop from one to one to one to one to every franchise. They're going to love anything they can get science fiction. But for the most part, a lot of these franchises have like their exclusive fan bases. Yes, some Star Wars fans are going to like Star Trek. There is a crossover, but it's not the entire fan base of Star Wars. Just like there are people in the science fiction community who only like reading books. They don't really care for Star Wars, other than maybe they may have some Star Wars books like. They're more into like Dune. They're not gonna watch the movie. They're gonna read, works from authors whose name I'm not even gonna try to guess, because I would have to Google, top 10 science fiction authors, or look up maybe something that Vox Day still recommends some authors. I kind of feel bad for these people. I don't think this is their ideal. This looks like something that they're being told to market it as, and their answers are way too short. They don't convey passion and like, oh, I'm super passionate about this. Like, you guys heard me rant about UFOs. I don't need to say, hey, I'm somewhat passionate about that, and go into specifics about like, hey, well, where it gets tepid. You can guess that. You can look at my gamer score and my gameplay videos and guess that I'm passionate about gaming. I don't really need to say that. This just comes across as a Hello Kids moment. Now, I hope, if you guys see this, no hate toward you guys, but you might want to consider redoing your format and actually giving more long-form answers, as this was not a good look. I went into this game with some hype, and I'm leaving after watching these 6 videos with like virtually no hype. I think your game's obviously going to be politically interjected. I believe the science fiction concepts you are going to base your story on are going to be dated. Now, not as bad as Starfield. Still something that raises my concern. That being said, though, dated and accurate don't matter if it's really cool. If they drop something really cool, I'm not going to care that it's not scientifically accurate, or I should say reality accurate, because sometimes science and reality do greatly differ from one another. If you want a good example of it, look up all the creatures that science type B scientists said were flat out not real over the last 100 years. Like the giant African worm, which is about 10 feet long, or the Tasmanian devil, or the gorilla, or that species of fish that they thought was extinct. There's innumerable examples of just really duh stuff that science has said is not real, and it really was. So keep that in mind. Now, you guys heard me rant. Thank you for tuning into the whole video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe these videos really inspired you guys to be more hyped for this game. Obviously, I'm not. I've said that repeatedly. Kind of beating a dead cow. And yes, I know that saying is horse. But, gotta tenderize that cow meat. Like, subscribe. Peace.